Welcome back, Bear fans, to the Windy City Bears Network. I'm your host, RC. Today, I want to do a year preview on Caleb Williams, reviewing his rookie season and what is his expectations moving into next season, especially with Ben Johnson, new play caller, more weapons, improved O-line. If you listen to the media, a lot of people hate on Caleb Williams, said he had a horrible season. And I understand that there was two rookie quarterbacks last year in Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels that had really good seasons, and good for them. The things about those two quarterbacks, which I'll get into real quick, is both of those guys stayed in college 5 or 6 years. Caleb was there for 3 years. So Bo Nix is a older quarterback. I want to say he's about 25 years old already. And he went to a good situation. I'm not saying he had all the weapons, but he went to a good situation with Sean Payton, one of the best play callers ever. And they had a good enough line. He didn't get hit a lot. So he threw 29 touchdown passes. The thing about Bo Nix, in my opinion, is how much better can he be than he was last year. To me, that's pretty close to his ceiling, is that's what he is. You know, he's going to come in and hit the floor running, as they would say, because he's older. He's more mature. He's played a lot of football. But his ceiling is not as high as Caleb's. And to me, it's not even close. And that's why he was the 6th quarterback picked, because of his age, because of the limitations. He's a solid quarterback. You know, he's pretty athletic for what he is. And he has a decent arm, but he's coached hard and he went to a good situation. You add more talent, you know, maybe he can have a couple of seasons where he throws for 30, 35 touchdowns possibly. But to me, that's pretty much what he is. Now, talking about Jaden Daniels has superstar qualities. He was Rookie of the Year. You know, he's dynamic with his feet. Passing wise, just looking statistically, he didn't have that much better of a season than Caleb throwing the ball. I think he barely threw for maybe 40 yards more than Caleb did last year. Obviously, he ran for more yards and had more rushing touchdowns. But even touchdowns to Caleb threw 20 touchdowns and he threw 25. He had 9 interceptions. Caleb had 6. I mean, it's still in the same ballpark. He went to a situation. He didn't get sacked as much. Any true Bear fans who watched the games of Caleb Williams last year know that, of course, as a rookie, he had ups and downs. But he was asked to do a lot as soon as he got to Chicago. He was asked to call out blitzes. Those are things that a rookie quarterback shouldn't have to do. I think that was super important for us to get a center, which we did this offseason, to help him, to let him focus on other stuff. You know, they threw a lot of stuff at Caleb, and to me, he handled it pretty well. He didn't have a unbelievable season, but he had a very good rookie season. And if you want to go and look at other rookies who were first overall picks, who run rookie of the year, look at Kyler Murray. I mean, Kyler Murray had 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, was rookie of the year. Caleb had 20 touchdowns, less interceptions. I think Kyler Murray ran for a little bit more yards, but they had a similar season. And I know a lot of people want to put emphasis, and I understand that, you know, with Bo Nix, they made the playoffs. Good for them. Washington made the playoffs. Good for them. You know, that's not the only thing that gets you to say, oh, they had a good rookie season is because they made the playoffs. You go back and look at Ben Roethlisberger. He didn't have great statistical season when they made the playoffs as a rookie. They ran the ball. They played defense. He became a good quarterback over time, but he wasn't lighting up the world his first year. So for what they asked Caleb to do and for the O-line, how many players missed games? I mean, we signed Nate Davis. We tried to, I think after week 6, we cut him. He was that bad. You know, Tevin Jenkins kept going in and out of the lineup. Our center couldn't stop a bull rush to save his life. Braxton Jones at the end of the season broke his foot and he was out for a couple games. But that whole line was changing. He didn't have a starting five that just was consistent. And hopefully we fix that by bringing in 3 offensive linemen who don't have a history of injuries. People could say Jackson that we got from the Rams last year, he missed a couple of games, but he was healthy. He was a healthy scratch. They weren't playing him, but it wasn't because he was hurt. They also moved him to center, and he was playing out of position. But he played well in Detroit, made a Pro Bowl in Detroit. So if we can keep that interior solid, I think that's going to be huge. Joe Thuney, he's going to be able to help whoever's starting at left tackle, regardless if it's Braxton Jones, regardless if it's our rookie, Ozzie, yes. Whoever's starting, he's a all-pro left guard who's going to help that person out. Hopefully we get the stability back. Play calling is going to be way better this year than last year, obviously. We went through multiple play callers last year. We fired our OC, halfway through the season, fired a coach. So stability is going to be key for Caleb. He is learning a new offense, though. So it's going to be simplified, in my opinion. They're going to make calls, easier reads for him to get rid of the ball quicker. So even though he's learning a new offense, and it's going to take a while for him to master it, they're going to call plays that he likes and to have mismatches. So hopefully we get a lot of yak yards after the catch. But just let's break down Caleb Williams' rookie season. For the whole total yards, he had over 4,000 total yards last season as a rookie. That's good. I don't care what people say. He threw for over 3,500 yards. He ran for over 450. 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, he was getting close to breaking the NFL record for most consecutive passes without an interception. He broke the rookie record for that. But he was getting close to breaking Aaron Rodgers' record for that. He went 353 passes without a pick. And you can average that and say, throwing the ball 35 times a game, 9 or 10 games that he's didn't throw a pick. So he was protecting the ball. A lot of people say, oh, well, that's because he was check downing. He was just dumping it off. At the end of the day, some of those dump offs was because he was scrambling and those were the only people open were dump offs. But I don't believe he was just trying to play safe and not throw a pick. He was still throwing the ball down the field, but you also have to do what the play calls for. And unfortunately, they were calling a lot of plays that are receivers. If you go back and watch film on DJ Moore, he was running a lot of 5-out routes, 7-out. He wasn't going down the field. I think, and if you look at how many catches he had, 98 catches, and still didn't have 1,000 yards, that's play calling. That's not Caleb just checking it down. They're not having these receivers go out for passes. And maybe they're saying, well, we didn't want to go throw the ball down the field because of all the sacks and we wanted to try and get the ball out faster. But you still have to do a better job of being able to max protect. And even if you're only sending 3 receivers out, then that's what you should do. If you're 3 receivers, which last year, Rome, DJ, and Allen, you're paying them money or you drafted one in the top 10, you should say, hey, these guys can beat coverage. Then you should have max protect, kept your running backs in, had another tight end in to block or, chip. That's what they should have did. But, like I said, that was last year. Caleb also had 4 games of over 300 yards. If you go look at his first game of the season against Tennessee, it was horrible. He threw for 98 yards. They asked a lot of him, and, he didn't have a great game. The next game against the Colts wasn't a great game, but he still threw for 360 yards, 363 to be exact. And we had a chance to win, a couple bad calls. I'm not going to get into that. But we had a chance to win. We could have won that game. When you look at some other rookie quarterbacks who either sat 10 games, Caleb was thrown into the fire from the beginning of the season. He only missed 2 snaps, and that was because we were winning. Or maybe one was because he was a little nicked up and went out for 1 play. The other one was a kneel down, and that was it. He He played the whole season. He didn't complain about anything. He didn't throw his offensive lineman under the bus. He didn't throw coaches under the bus. So for a lot of people saying he's a diva, you know, all this stuff coming out about Caleb from last year and him and his dad, who cares, to be honest with you? That was last year. And yeah, maybe his dad didn't want him to come here, but he's here now. And he's done everything we've asked of him. And he's proud to be a Chicago Bear. And all that is old news. Who cares? You know, I think the media doesn't have anything to talk about, so they want to bring this up. I don't think it's an issue. I think Caleb's going to be here for a long time. I think he will sign an extension. I see him being here at least 9-10 years minimum. But going back to some of these other rookies, you look at Cam Newton, who had a great rookie season, threw for over 4,000 yards, but only threw 21 touchdowns. Now, yes, he ran for, I want to say, 14 touchdowns that year. So you have to account for that. But he only threw 21 touchdowns, and he threw 17 picks. Caleb threw 6. So when you're comparing quarterbacks, and I know it's a different type of quarterback. He's a running quarterback. I understand that. But just throwing the ball, Cam was okay. He wasn't fantastic. Like I said, Kyler Murray, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That was okay. He was number 1 pick in the draft also. Going back to Andrew Luck, who had a great rookie season. He threw for over 4,000 yards, 4,300 yards that year. 23 touchdowns. Caleb threw 20. He threw 18 picks. Caleb threw 6. So when you want to say, this media wants to say, oh, Caleb had a horrible season, he didn't. Did we win enough games? No, that's not all on Caleb, though. You know, statistically, he had a dang good rookie season. And I expect it to be even better this year. We did a lot of things that we should have did, but just because you should do something doesn't mean you can. You know, we wanted to draft a running back in the draft. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because the backs weren't there when we were picking and we didn't want to reach. And there's always factors, you know, for us to go out and be aggressive and trade for 2 offensive linemen to make sure that we got these offensive linemen and not hope that you can sign somebody in free agency. Then we targeted the center from Atlanta, Dahlman. That was huge. And that was the right decision. You know, a lot of people said, oh, we need to get the guard from the other guard from the Chiefs, which would have cost more money. But center was the big deal. That's what we definitely had to fix. We haven't had a stable center in a long time. The last great one was Olin Kreutz, and he's been retired for a long time. We needed to fix that. We needed somebody to be able to work with Caleb for the next couple of years. Hopefully he signs an extension. He's only 26 years old. I know all 3 of these offensive linemen that we brought in all have 3-year contracts because we extended the other 2. But so at least for 3 years, there should be some stability at O-line. Ben Johnson is the best offensive play caller in the NFL. I think he's proven that the last 3 seasons. You know, statistically, Detroit's had the best offense the last 3 years, statistically overall. He's proven that he can at least call plays. That's not going to be an issue. Goff has had great, and he's got better. If you go back and look at Goff's years in Detroit, every year he got better. Every year his yards went up. Every year his touchdowns went up. The more comfortable he got. You know, he's technically the best quarterback in our division right now. I don't think he will be much longer, but he is right now. Caleb has the most ability than any quarterback in our division. He has the most upside than any quarterback in our division. I don't care if it's Jordan Love. I think he's overrated personally. And J.J. McCarthy. He has a good skill set. I will say that, but I don't really trust him, and maybe I'll be wrong, but he didn't make a lot of huge plays in college. I know he wasn't asked to do that. You know, they played defense and ran the ball, and that's probably what they're going to try and do in Minnesota. You know, they got a very good defense. They got a couple backs. They traded for one. So probably the same formula. Don't turn the ball over. Don't make mistakes. But that makes you a game manager. You know, Caleb's not that. Caleb is a big game hunter in a lot of senses. You know, he's going to make big plays. He's going to make splash plays. And Ben Johnson wants him to. And I think when you have the weapons we do at tight end now, us being able to get Luther Burden in the second round, who I had as, at worst, the third best receiver in the draft. I had him higher than that, but at worst, I think the third best receiver in the draft. He's your third receiver. I think Rome Odunze is going to have a monster season this year. And him and Caleb have a pretty good relationship. And from what I hear with the coaching staff, they think he should be the number one. He does all the little things, and he's a mismatch. He's a bigger receiver. You got Luther in the slot and DJ. And then, like I say, you got Colston Loveland, 6'5", 6'6", tight end, who's going to be a matchup problem. They're not going to be able to stack the box. Caleb, that was another thing. Caleb Williams did not have a running game last year. Not by committee, not by anything. We didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. Our yards per attempt were not high. So a bad O-line, no rushing game, multiple play callers. Everybody's saying, you're making excuses for Caleb. Nobody's making excuses. This is just the reality of what he had to go through last year. It is what it is. He went through it. He's grown from it. He's working his butt off to be better. And I think he's, if you listen to him in interviews, he's writing down notes on all these people talking trash about him. And there's a decent amount of people. He's the type of guy who's going to get back at all the people who talk about him. He doesn't just not pay attention to those things. He wants to be the best quarterback in this draft. And guess what? Let's say he's the second best. Let's say Jaden Daniels turns out to be the best quarterback. There's been plenty of drafts that have multiple Hall of Fame quarterbacks in it. You had Jim Kelly, Dan Marino, Elway in the same draft. You had Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. I mean, so what? If Jaden Daniels is very good, good for him. We're focusing on the Bears. We're focusing on Caleb. And we got the right guy. He has the makeup to deal with all the criticism that he deals with. And he lets it roll off his back. So, another guy who was rookie of the season, I was debating if I was going to bring him up, but Jameis Winston, 22 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. He threw for 4,000 yards as a rookie. People say, well, he didn't have a great career. He's moving around teams. That's fine. He also threw for 5,000 yards in a season. I mean, he still has ability, but that also goes back to you have ability, but you have the work ethic. And I'm not saying he doesn't, but there's other factors that factor into all these things. I truly believe if you have the talent, it's eventually going to come out. Obviously, Caleb has the talent, or he wouldn't have been the number one pick. He would have been pretty much the consensus number one pick for 2 years, going to USC, winning the Heisman Trophy. I think because there was a lot of hype coming out of college about Caleb, that the media wants to beat him up for that. And that's fine. Projections for this season, I think Caleb is going to throw probably 29 touchdowns. I know the record is 29 touchdowns by Eric Kramer. I think he'll tie that record. I don't think he'll break it this season. I think he'll probably throw about 12 picks, doubling what last year. He threw the ball a lot last year. I think he's going to take more chances this season because of the play calling. So he probably will throw some more picks. I think he will break the 4,000-yard mark this year. I think he's going to throw for about 4,100. And run for another 500 yards and probably get another 3 touchdowns rushing. So, if he can get 32 total touchdowns, over 4,600 yards of offense, with 12 picks, we'll take that. I think his quarterback rating, which was at 87 last year, I think it'll go up to at least a 92. Another thing about Caleb last year, 20 touchdowns, 10 of them came in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, he had 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So when it mattered the most, he played big. When he had opportunities to tie games, when you go and look at the Washington game, he drove us all the way down the field, first and goal at the 1. And our center, who we moved to fullback, fumbles the ball. Everybody's like, oh, game's over. We get the ball back again, drive all the way down and score a touchdown. Take the lead, get the 2-point conversion. It's not his fault that we gave up a Hail Mary. Against the Packers, had opportunity to come down and win the game, drove us all the way down, They blocked the field goal, even though it was illegal. The Hall Bear fans know that. But he did his job again. Had the opportunity to come out and tie the game, send it into overtime against Minnesota. He did it. Had a chance to drive down against the Packers again in Lambeau. He did it. And we kicked the field goal and we won that game. He's put us in positions. He's played big. His quarterback rating was at 87, but in the fourth quarter, it was a 108. So it jumped up. He's played big in big moments. And that's the thing I don't think people are looking at when they say he had a bad season. No, when it was time for him to answer the bell, he did. When he needed to step up, he did. When he needed to make plays, he did. Against Seattle, we lost that game 6-3. He throws that beautiful touchdown pass that they called back. That would have won the game. So there's a handful of plays he's made. There's a handful of games we could have won, but we didn't. And guess what? If we did, maybe Ben Johnson's not our coach. So everything happens for a reason, as they would say. And, it is what it is. And we're in a good position. Our schedule is super hard this year. So us going 9-8 would be a great year for us, honestly. Would I like us to win more? Absolutely. But realistically, it's going to be tough. Us to get 8, 9, 10 games, hopefully we stay healthy. Certain players need to make that jump, though. So not just Caleb. Rome needs to make a jump. I'm going to do the breakdown next, probably, of Swift. A lot of people have been dogging him, and we want to replace him. I think he's going to have a very good season, but I'm going to do a video on that. I'm going to try and do these videos at least once a week on starters and break them down. Fourth quarter, Caleb was a 95 quarterback rating, and in overtime, he was 108. And yes, I know overtime, he only played maybe 2 games in overtime. But 300-yard games, he had 4. Jaden Daniels only had 1. Bo Nix only had 2. So, I was going to talk about a couple other guys. C.J. Stroud, number 2 pick. Everybody said, he had this great season last year. He had an okay season last year, but they made the playoffs. I think that's what people are saying. Well, he did throw for over 4,000, 25 touchdowns. But look at his season this year. His stats, Caleb, I think, had better statistical season than CJ did last year. But if you go back and look at RG3's rookie season, I know he didn't start every game. He was rookie of the year. Statistically, Caleb had a better season. So Caleb had a fine rookie season. So for the media to keep trying to say he didn't, that's not true. His footwork, he's been working on. I think it's going to be better. He has a guy who's a football junkie and a head coach who's going to be able to coach him hard, help him watch film. Us bringing in Case Keenum was big too. Nobody's talking about that, but it's good. He's going to be able to mentor him also and help him a little bit. He didn't have a veteran quarterback there last year. He had Tyson Bagent, who was an undrafted rookie free agent the year before. He didn't know anything neither. So we didn't have a veteran quarterback. We didn't have the right OC. There's a lot of things that we didn't do right. I know a lot of people want to beat up Ryan Poles on that, but Ryan Poles, I think, has done a fine job overall. And I did a video on him. If you want to go back and look, I'm going to do one more on Ryan Poles after the draft because, now we completed the trade 100% for the number 1 pick with Carolina. So if you like my content, please subscribe. Like I said, I'm going to have a lot of videos coming out. I know I haven't done a lot of stuff lately, but I'm going to start getting more videos out, especially on breakdowns of all these players. Subscribe. If you disagree with anything I said, please leave a comment. I will get back to you. Thanks again, Bear fans. Until next time, bear down.